A lie. Not the kind of lie that hurts others, but the kind that keeps you safe. The kind you wear like armor when you're not sure who sees you as a person and who sees you as a burden. It's a disguise built out of silence, thrift store sweaters, and a carefully cultivated image of someone who's barely holding it together. I'd been wearing that disguise for 3 long years when the call came in on a Tuesday morning. Eric's voice sounded tense on the phone. He tried to sound casual, but I could hear the stiffness in each word, the kind of tightness that creeps in when someone else is listening. "Mom, would you like to come over for dinner on Friday night? Vanessa's making her famous lasagna." Famous. That word almost made me laugh. Vanessa could barely boil pasta without burning the bottom of the pot, but I had learned to bite my tongue. Over the years, I'd become quite skilled at pretending things didn't sting. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart. What time?" 7:30, he replied. Then came the pause. "And Mom, maybe dress a little nicer this time. You know how Vanessa likes things to look presentable." Presentable. I stood there staring at my reflection in the hallway mirror after we hung up. Gray hair pulled back in a bun, no makeup, wearing a cardigan I'd owned for years. I looked like someone you'd pass in a grocery store without noticing. For 3 years this had been my uniform. The grieving widow, the woman who sold her car to make ends meet, the woman who sometimes skipped lunch to stretch her budget, or so they thought. What they didn't know was that every choice I made was intentional. The small apartment, paid in full. The clothes, a costume. The quiet, a strategy. That Friday night dinner wasn't going to be just another awkward family evening. No, something about that call, about the way Eric hesitated, told me something was coming. And for the first time in 3 years I was ready. Ready to stop pretending. Ready to let the truth do what it always does. Shine. The October air had a bite to it that evening, as I walked the 6 blocks to Eric and Vanessa's house. I could have driven. My real car was parked in a secure garage across town, but the long walk was part of the image. It helped sell the story. A tired old woman, doing her best to keep going, alone. Their house hadn't changed in 7 years. Same light fixtures, same flower boxes, same wreath I'd bought them the first Christmas they lived there. I still remembered the day I signed the deed. It had been my wedding gift to them, a secret one. I had the title hidden away, registered under a property trust they knew nothing about. Eric opened the door before I could even knock. "Hi, Mom. Come in," he said with a quick, polite hug. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Inside, the warmth was immediate: central heating, designer rugs, scented candles, but not one bit of it felt welcoming. It felt curated, staged. Then came Vanessa. "Helen," she said, her tone brittle and smooth all at once. She emerged from the dining room, in a tight black dress, platinum blonde curls perfectly set. "We're just plating up now. I hope you like lasagna." "Thank you for having me," I said gently. She gave me a once-over, starting at my shoes and ending at my hair. Of course, family dinner and all that. The dining room was immaculately set. Their finest china gleamed under the light fixture. Polished wine glasses reflected the chandelier above. But my place setting was different. A faded plate, a mismatched water glass, a fork with a bent tine. It was subtle, deliberate. Eric gestured toward the seat farthest from both of them. "Sit here, Mom." I did, without a word. Vanessa brought in the food like she was hosting a cooking show. "It's my grandmother's recipe," she said as she served. The lasagna was uneven, clearly overcooked on one side, watery on the other. "It's delicious," I said, "because that's what mothers do." Dinner began in halting conversation. Eric talked about work. Vanessa talked about furniture and yoga. I mostly listened. And though I didn't say much, I noticed everything. The glances, the sighs, the performance of generosity. They thought they knew who I was. And that would be their biggest mistake. About 20 minutes into dinner, the energy shifted. I felt it before the words were spoken, the way silence pulled between bites, the way Vanessa dabbed her lips with a napkin like she was preparing to deliver a speech. Eric cleared his throat. "Actually, Mom," he began, his voice low and hesitant, "we wanted to talk to you about something." I set down my fork. "Go on." Vanessa leaned forward, placing her hands on the table with carefully rehearsed concern. "Helen, we've been worried about you." I tilted my head slightly. "Oh? You've been alone for so long now," she said, drawing out each word like she was trying to sound nurturing. "That tiny apartment, barely getting by, it's not a sustainable life." "I manage fine," I said calmly. "Do you?" Her voice softened, as if she were trying to sell me something. You don't have a car, your clothes are, well, worn. It's been 3 years since Alan passed and you haven't really done anything for yourself. You need something to give you purpose. Eric nodded, though he didn't meet my eyes. Vanessa smiled sweetly. We were thinking maybe it's time you got a job. A job? I repeated, not out of confusion but to give her space to show just how little she understood. Just something simple, she said quickly, like greeting at a store. Walmart's always hiring. The silence that followed was thick and humming. I could feel it press against my chest. After 20 years of running a successful business with my late husband, after decades of making payroll, negotiating contracts, growing a company from a garage operation to a multi-state enterprise, this woman who had never held a job longer than a month thought I should stand at the door of a superstore and smile at strangers for minimum wage. Not because I needed money, but because she wanted me to be smaller. I took a breath and looked at her. You think I need purpose? She nodded, relieved to have my attention. Yes, independence, self-respect. I smiled, not warmly. And you think a name tag and a blue vest will give me that? Vanessa laughed nervously. Well, it's better than sitting around waiting for handouts. Don't take this the wrong way, but it's not healthy to rely on others on Eric all the time. Eric stared at his plate. The irony burned hotter than the lukewarm lasagna. I hadn't asked them for a thing since Alan's funeral. Every dollar I'd spent was mine. Every struggle they thought they were helping me through was a carefully chosen silence on my part. But to Vanessa, I was just another burden she couldn't wait to offload. I looked at her, and my voice dropped to a whisper. Is that what you think I am? A burden? She glanced at Eric again, hoping for support. He said nothing. And just like that, I knew exactly what had to happen next. The air in the room had gone still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Vanessa recovered first. Don't take it personally, she said, flashing the tight smile she reserved for people she thought were beneath her. We're just trying to help. Darren and I are building something. We're young, we're ambitious. We can't keep supporting someone who won't support herself. I stared at the woman sitting across from me, her hair perfectly styled, her nails immaculate, her hands that had never scrubbed a floor or balanced a ledger. And here she was, delivering a sermon about self-sufficiency from the comfort of a house she didn't know I owned. You've gotten too comfortable being dependent, she added. It's not healthy for anyone. There it was. The final blow, the quiet assumption that my mere existence was a burden, an expense, an embarrassment. I looked at my son, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He stayed silent. That hurt more than all of Vanessa's words combined. I stood slowly, deliberately. The room seemed to shrink around me as I pushed my chair back. Thank you for dinner, I said, my voice steady. The lasagna was exactly what I expected. Vanessa blinked, confused. Eric looked up, alarmed. And then I turned toward the door, but not before leaving a final note, light and sharp. Oh, and Vanessa. Ah. She folded her arms. Yes? I paused, hand on the doorknob. Then I looked her straight in the eye. You might want to start updating your own resume. Silence. She stared at me, open-mouthed, trying to decode what I meant. I didn't explain. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam the door. I simply left. Because the storm was already coming, and they had no idea who it was headed for. 3 days passed before Eric called. I wasn't surprised. Vanessa wouldn't have let him sleep until she got some kind of explanation. But I could tell from the cautious tone in his voice that he wasn't just calling on her behalf. Mom, can we talk? Of course, sweetheart, I said. Would you like to come over? There was hesitation. In 3 years, Eric had never visited my apartment. He'd offered once more out of obligation than desire, but Vanessa had always found a reason why it wasn't a good idea. Now, for the first time, he didn't have her interference. Yeah, okay, I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and got to work. I made his favorite coffee, the good beans I kept hidden in the back of the cupboard. I put away the financial documents I'd been reviewing. I changed into something modest but presentable. Still plain enough to match the image he expected, but with just a touch more care. When he arrived, he stood in the doorway, taking in the small living room, the thrifted furniture, the thin curtains. This place is, he trailed off. Small? I offered. I was going to say depressing. I smiled, pouring the coffee into one of my nice cups. He took a sip. His eyebrows lifted. This is really good. I splurge occasionally. We sat across from each other at my little kitchen table. He looked tired, not just physically, but soul tired. About Friday night, he started. Yes? Vanessa's really upset. She thinks you threatened her. I met his gaze. What do you think? He hesitated. I think something's going on with you. Something I don't understand. I leaned back, wrapping my fingers around my mug. Do you remember what your father used to say about people who mistake kindness for weakness? Eric nodded slowly. He said they learned the difference eventually. Exactly. I reached for the manila folder I'd tucked behind a stack of cookbooks, set it on the table, opened it. Aim? Eric, I said quietly. There's something I need to show you. He looked down, confused, then froze as his eyes scanned the numbers, the bank names, the deeds. Mom, what is this? This, I said, is who I really am. And just like that, the lie I'd lived for 3 years began to unravel. Eric flipped through the folder slowly, his hands trembling slightly as he processed each page. Account summaries, investment portfolios, deeds to properties in 3 different states, trust documents, retirement accounts. None of it matched the version of me he thought he knew. I don't understand, he whispered. You live here. You don't even have a car. By choice, I said gently. But why? He looked at me, hurt blooming in his eyes. Why let us believe you were struggling? I set my cup down. Because I needed to know, Eric. I needed to see who would still love me if they thought I had nothing to offer. The words landed between us like a weight. You were testing us? He asked, voice brittle. I was protecting myself, I said. There's a difference. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms tightly. From what? I didn't answer immediately. I wanted the silence to sit with him. From people like Vanessa, I said at last. From people who only smile when they think you're useful. Eric rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't know. I didn't realize she was like that. Didn't you? His hands fell to the table. I mean, I knew she had a sharp tongue, but I didn't think she meant harm. Let me ask you something, I said. When was the last time she asked me how I was doing, not financially, but emotionally? When did she last invite me to anything that wasn't out of obligation? When did she defend me, speak kindly about me, show even the smallest sign of warmth? He didn't respond. He didn't need to. Because he knew. I guess I didn't want to see it, he admitted. It's easier that way, I said softly. But easier doesn't mean better. We sat in silence, broken only by the sound of the old wall clock ticking above the sink. Finally, he looked up. What happens now? I studied his face, the face of a man who once brought me wildflowers and told me I was the prettiest mom in the world. Now, I said, we find out whether it's too late, or if there's still time to come back to the truth. And Vanessa? He asked quietly. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Vanessa, I said, is about to learn what happens when you mistake silence for weakness. That Friday evening, I arrived at their house, no, my house, at exactly 7. This time, I didn't wear thrifted sweaters or sensible shoes. I wore who I was. A deep navy dress, tailored and elegant. Real pearls, polished leather heels, no flash, just quiet certainty. Eric opened the door. His eyes widened. Mom, you look different. Like myself, I said simply. Behind him, Vanessa appeared, her eyes narrowed, scanning me like I was a rival at a gala. She was dressed up too, perhaps hoping to reclaim some semblance of control through expensive fabric. It wouldn't help. We moved to the living room. The same room I had helped decorate 7 years ago. The same rug I had picked. The same sofa I had bought. I sat on it now, as though settling into a throne. Vanessa crossed her arms. Let's hear it, she snapped. The truth. The full story. Why lie for years? What kind of person pretends to be poor? The kind who wants to see clearly, I said. She laughed bitterly. I'm your daughter-in-law, not your friend. Then maybe, I replied, you can explain why you told Miss Simmons next door that I was becoming senile. Or why you told the postman I might need assisted living. Her face went pale. Eric turned to her. Vanessa, is that true? She stammered. I was concerned. She dresses strangely. She forgets things. Or you were setting the stage, I said, reaching into my bag. I pulled out a thick envelope. 3 months ago, Vanessa had contacted an elder law attorney. She had inquired about guardianship, about accessing assets, about legal control over a declining relative. Eric's jaw tightened. You tried to take control of her finances? She doesn't need all that money. Vanessa burst out. She's alone. We have a future to build. Interesting, I said, pulling out one final document. The deed. My name. In bold print, the legal owner of the home she thought was hers. This house belongs to me, I said, and for the past 7 years you've been my guest. She stared at the paper like it might catch fire in her hands. "You need to leave, Vanessa, tonight. You can't do this." "Oh, I can," I said calmly, and I just did. Vanessa's expression twisted into something I hadn't seen before, rage laced with desperation. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You think you've won, but you haven't. You destroyed my marriage." "No," I replied evenly. "You did that the moment you saw my son as a stepping stone instead of a partner." She turned to Eric, frantic. "You're really letting her do this to me?" Eric didn't answer. He was still staring at the deed in stunned silence. "I have rights," she shouted. "Tenant rights. You can't just throw me out." "You're not a tenant," I said. "You never paid rent. You're a guest. And your welcome expired the moment you tried to take advantage of me." I slipped the deed back into my purse. 30 minutes, I added. "After that, I call the police." She stared at Eric, expecting him to defend her, to step in, to choose her. Instead, he looked up and said softly, "Pack your things, Vanessa." Her mouth fell open. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "This is my mother's house. You treated her like garbage in her own home. And you lied to me over and over." She looked between us, realizing no one was coming to save her. "You'll regret this," she whispered. "No," I said. "I regret giving you the benefit of the doubt for as long as I did." She stormed up the stairs. We could hear her throwing drawers open, shouting into the air like someone who just realized their reign was over. I stood quietly beside my son, watching as everything began to fall. He turned to me, eyes heavy. "Mom, I don't even know what's real anymore." I put my hand gently on his shoulder. "This is," I said, "right now, us, standing here, facing it." "What happens next?" he asked. "We deal with the consequences," I replied. Because for every lie Vanessa had told, for every cruel comment, for every manipulative whisper in the dark, there was finally something stronger. The truth. And the truth, when it arrives, does not knock. It kicks the door wide open. The next few days were a blur. Vanessa moved out that night, half in anger, half in humiliation. She left behind more than a few designer shoes and a drawer full of SPAC coupons. But what she really left was silence, a space we hadn't had in years. Eric stayed at a friend's for a while. He needed time. Space to breathe. Space to grieve not just the end of a marriage, but the realization that the woman he'd trusted had been living an entirely different truth. When he finally came over to see me, it was different. He looked tired, yes, but also lighter. "Mom," he said, sitting across from me with a cup of coffee in his hands, "I want to thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For saving me, even when I didn't know I needed saving." I smiled. "That's what mothers do." He hesitated, then added, "There's someone I've been seeing, just recently. Her name's Rachel. She's different." I raised an eyebrow. "Different how?" "She teaches 3rd grade, drives a car older than mine, thinks hiking is the best date idea, and she doesn't know anything about our money." That last part made me smile. "Maybe this time," I said gently, "you lead with who you are, not what you have." Eric nodded. "Yeah, I think I'm finally ready to do that." It wasn't everything. We still had wounds, still had awkward pauses, but the fog between us was lifting. The truth had cost us something, but it had also set the ground for something far more precious. A second chance. 6 months later, I stood on the terrace of my penthouse, a glass of wine in hand, watching the city shimmer as the sun dipped below the skyline. The house that Eric and Vanessa once lived in had been sold. I handed him the proceeds quietly, no lectures, no conditions. Just a real gift, not a test, not a disguise, a new beginning. Vanessa had been sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by probation and restitution. She was also barred by court order from contacting either of us. But I knew even that wouldn't stop her from trying. That part no longer frightened me. Because I was no longer pretending to be someone fragile. I was back. Not as the grieving widow or the helpless mother-in-law, but as Helen Bradford, businesswoman, survivor mother. Eric and I were rebuilding, slowly, carefully, truthfully. He introduced me to Rachel over brunch one Sunday afternoon. She wore no makeup, laughed freely, and insisted on splitting the check. I liked her immediately. "She's kind," Eric said afterward. "She makes me feel like I'm enough." "That's how you know," I told him. "Real love doesn't make you feel smaller. It reminds you who you are." As for me, I finally stopped living in the shadows of grief and strategy and silence. I traveled. Donated to causes I cared about. Took long walks without needing to look over my shoulder. And every time I passed a mirror, I saw her again. The woman I'd almost forgotten. the woman I had quietly protected all along. And now? Now I was ready to live not in disguise but in full light. Exactly as I am. And that, after everything, was the most honest victory of all. If there's one thing this journey has taught me, it's this. People will show you who they are when they think you have nothing left to offer. And in those moments, the silence you choose may be the greatest power you hold. I told my story not for revenge but for clarity. For anyone out there who's ever felt small in their own family, forgotten in a home they helped build, or dismissed because they chose quiet over spectacle. What would you do if you were in my place? Tell me in the comments. I'd truly love to hear. And if this story spoke to you, share it. You never know who else needs to be reminded. You are not a burden. You are the foundation.